Monday, March 10th, 2025. The time is 6:11 p.m., and we will go ahead and call this meeting of the Burlington City Council to order. The first item on our agenda is a motion to amend and then adopt our amended agenda. There is a recommended action listed on Civic Clerk, which I would welcome from any councilor. We can't start until someone gives us an agenda.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. I move to amend and adopt the agenda as follows. Remove from the consent agenda item 5.12, Conservation Legacy Fund Nature-Based Solutions per Councilor Grant. Recommendation for funding BPRW DPI per CAO Shad. Note amended version for deliberative agenda item 6.4, resolution guaranteeing access to city-owned buildings and programs for city councilors for Councilor Shannon and Litwin. Remove from the consent agenda item 5.15, parking garage security contract. Extension through FY25 DPW Division of Parking and Traffic, and place it on the deliberative agenda as item 6.5 per Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilor Carpenter. We will go to a vote on that motion. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. We have our agenda as amended. Public forum this evening is set for a time certain of 6:30 p.m. So before then, we will turn first to the second and third items on our agenda. Mayor, the second item on our agenda is Mayor General City Affairs. So when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Please forgive my voice. I'm just getting over the flu, which is no fun, and I hope everyone washes their hands. So I would like to start by acknowledging and celebrating our town meeting day, which happened last week, and wanted to note that we had a really successful election. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the Board of Civil Authority in terms of the operations of our successful election. My gratitude to city staff and all the folks who work at our polls, so more to come on that. But I wanted to acknowledge that amongst the work that the administration advanced, we had 3 very highly successful bonds that are true investments into the infrastructure and needs currently and in the future for the city of Burlington. Our 3 bonds passed with over 80% of the voters' approval, which is remarkable in my book. This also included 3 city charter changes, and one in particular is one we brought back from 11 years ago to prohibit firearms in establishments that serve alcohol, and that received 89.9% of support of voters. That is also tremendous and sends a really critical message as part of looking forward to our comprehensive community safety response as the city of Burlington. As we said when we brought this back to voters, we need strong momentum headed into the State House because that's the next step of a city charter change in the process. And that 89.9% in particular, I can't think of a stronger message sending to our state legislature as well as the governor about what Burlington's true direction needs to be around common sense gun policy. We also, of course, had lots of support along the way for these 3 bonds and 3 charters. The unanimous support of this council, which I very much appreciate. We had lots of city staff hours that went into this, including in the evenings. There are too many folks to count in terms of the help here because the general obligation bond in particular impacts virtually every city department. And it was really an all across the board effort that we were really truly in this together to make the case to voters to make sure you're educated and then successful passage. So thank you to the voters. Thank you to the city unions who stood beside us to advocate for the critical need for both the water bond, the lake bond, and again, that GO bond I mentioned before. So thank you very much for that. Secondly, I want to give a brief update on as the legislature continues. They were out of session last week for town meeting day break, but they are on the eve of passing the Budget Adjustment Act, which is the first first bill that moves through the legislative process. It's gone through both the House and Senate, and the reason I'm mentioning this is that even though this bill is a sizable financial bill, it moves money around mid-fiscal year for the state. $1.8 million is what this comes down to as a critical thing for Burlington in terms of what we're tracking, because that is the money that was within this bill to extend the General Assistance Emergency Housing Program from April 1st to the end of July 30th. And the reason I'm mentioning this in particular is this is one of the 5 shortlisted items that was unanimously supported by the council to make sure the legislature comes up with a workable solution to our emergency housing crisis and does not contribute to adding to this incredibly harmful crisis that the state of Vermont is facing, but specifically the city of Burlington. And there is a great worry that I hold if the $1.8 million is not passed within the BAA. And I want folks to know that we're at the point of needing to send the message to the governor that this is critically needed for about 1,000 individuals across the state of Vermont, which includes about 400 children. But within Chittenden County, the estimate is about 88 households after April 1st would be exited from the motel emergency program. This adds pressure, it adds unsustainable pressure to the city of Burlington. As folks probably know, we already have around 250 unsheltered individuals in our community. If this BAA does not pass and get the support of the governor, we're facing, again, 88 more households, which are families with children facing uncertainty as of April 1st. So I encourage folks to track this item. I encourage city councilors to reach out to the governor. Our legislative delegation is working hard to do their part on the legislative side of it, but now we move to the governor's decision on this bill. And of course, the last thing on the legislative update, now that voters have successfully passed our 3 charter changes, those items become bills. They are not subject to crossover, so they'll move throughout the process, and we look forward to working with our already in place strategy to do our best case make our best case in the House and Senate to move those charters on behalf of Burlington voters. Second update I have for you is around community safety, as I always do. I mentioned or I announced in February that interim police chief Sean Burke will be joining the city of Burlington in a matter of days now. He'll begin on March 24th. This is a really critical and exciting moment for the city of Burlington to move forward. You'll see from Board of Finance, we just moved forward the creation of the position of interim police chief, and there's some more useful details in that memo about what his initial focus will be for the Burlington Police Department. It's going to be a really good and good day on March 24th as we welcome him back to the city of Burlington and get him to work. This Thursday, on March 13th, is our next and 4th Community Safety Forum. It's from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Fletcher Flea Library. There's an agenda posted in Town Meeting TV, of course. Thank you again, always, for recording this for folks in the community to watch later. It will have 2 focal points for this forum. One is a deep dive, now that we've been operating for about 6 months, our hotspot strategy. We will be diving into what does this strategy tell us about our approach so far, what does the data inform us around our approaches, around things improving or not, and how we're continuing to adapt those strategies across departments to address, again, hotspots are areas in the city, mostly in the center city, where tricky behavior and patterns are happening that we need to disrupt in order to make our community safer and a more responsive community safety system at that. We're also going to be focusing with a panel on hate and instances of bias. We have a panel from the Attorney General's Office, the Human Rights Commission, and Vermont Interfaith Action to go into what we're seeing in our community and how both the city and the state are responding to, again, making our community safer, more inclusive for folks and hate-free. I have a really positive announcement in terms of our overdose prevention center work that we continue to steward forward. I am happy tonight to announce we have selected the service provider after a letter of interest process and a diverse selection committee that reviewed the submissions in response to the LOI process. And tonight I'm announcing that the Vermont Criminal Justice, VCJR. I'm having a brain moment. VCJR, Vermonters for Criminal Justice Reform. I had the flu, y'all. VCJR was selected to be our service provider. They put an outstanding submission for us. It was vetted and highly regarded by our selection committee. We'll be presenting more information to the council and the public to come, but I wanted to make that public announcement tonight that we have selected a very strong service provider and now can get to work with what comes next around site selection, community engagement, dialogue, education, and ideally opening of an OPC successfully here in the city of Burlington. Since you last met, we opened yet for the 9th time our emergency cold weather shelter. It operated for one night on March 2nd into the 3rd. We had 65 to 70 or so people who took part of this life-saving shelter, and I continue to be very appreciative of the strong partnership within CVOEO and city staff who go above and beyond to make sure we can operate this center overnight. I can even see folks in this room who are part of that staffing, and it is a life-saving service, and I really appreciate everyone who makes sure we have the safe staffing ratios to operate this shelter, to support people who are in a critical need, and to make sure we can support those folks with dignity and support around getting housing and safe housing at that when temperatures dip into dangerous levels. My next community safety briefing that I started this last month, will be March 19th at 11:30. Folks are welcome. We're going to set up a Zoom kind of function so the community can also watch, but we'll invite members of the community to give a continued monthly update on all the items that we're continuing to advance on community safety. So that's again March 19th at 11:30 a.m., most likely at the Sharon Busher conference room downstairs. Finally, under community safety, I did a CRT ride-along about a week or two ago with members of our Burlington Fire Department who very generously brought me along. Again, this seems to be like this good luck, bad luck moment of the mayor goes on a ride-along and it is so quiet. But that did show me an opportunity to see the kind of proactive outreach our CRT staff do when things are a little quiet. We visited many different agencies and service providers in the community. They did a lot of proactive relationship building with folks who are out on the streets, handed out a lot of supplies, and built those critical relationships that continue to build the trust so folks can be able to reach out to the critical first responders when they are in need. A few different updates around generally around the community and the administration. We received, and I should have wrote down the entire title of this, but the Bloomberg Philanthropies puts on many aspects that support municipalities around the country. And one particular one that the city's been working on for a couple years now is the What Works Cities designation. This is a data-driven, evidence-based set of decision-making principles that they look for municipalities to be using, and if you are able to meet all the metrics, you can receive a designation. And so the city of Burlington received a silver designation, which is, I believe, the highest ranking of this designation within the Bloomberg system. We join a very short list of municipalities around the country. We have now a little award. I was like, we need an award case or something in City Hall. The reason why this is significant is that this not only shows the hard work of city staff to put the systems in place, including our data analysis team and departments being responsive and utilizing our data analysis team to not only make better decisions on how we use our resources, but how we then make policy decisions informed by that data. You've probably seen many of that here at city council meetings as we try to pull that together to offer that support to the council. But this is a big moment for Burlington, and I was happy to see the work of our data analysis team in particular, who took the lead of putting this application forward. I'm going to jump around a little bit here because there's a number of things I think would be interest for the council and the public to hear. Route 127, now a few weeks ago now, had a tragic accident happen on the Beltline, and we convened an internal staff to kind of look at both lighting and transportation and just the road and the city's obligation versus state. And while there's medium and long-term pieces that are needed for us to collect data in order to fully make recommendations, as well as community engagement around things that we can do for the road overall, in the immediacy, you will start seeing put up speed feedback signs, which is the official term for the thing that tells you you're going too fast, the digital sign. We have some on hand, and we'll be putting those out within the next week to 10 days. We're trying to do some immediate responses to make sure at least some portion of the public starts to understand how speed contributes to unsafe driving conditions while we get deeper into the history of what has happened along 127, and then what are some, again, medium, long-term solutions, but that will take some community engagement. I was briefed on the history, and it's more complicated than you think. Let's see. I want you to get yourself ready for March 24th council meeting, because there's a number of important work session updates from the administration, including our first big update on the Modern Gov initiative, also an update on the fiscal year 26 budget. As we last left off with Board of Finance in January, we'll do a deep dive with our CAO. We'll have an update on the memorial block and our work with that public-private partnership and how we're shaping up with making sure that community interests are in center of that particular partnership and what comes next on the block. We'll be talking about also impact fees, and then finally an update on the public health and safety building, which is that centralized building we're trying to imagine into the future around a merged police, fire, and public health, and perhaps CJC entity that is a new building that could hold the current and future needs of how we respond to community safety. So members of the public, if you bring your sleeping bags, you might want to come back in 2 weeks and learn a lot more deeply or watch the recordings around what we've been up to, and a lot of hard work by a lot of departments here in the city. 2 other items related to just administrative updates. We are deeply tracking our federal grants as we continue to navigate these uncertain and chaotic times with the Trump administration. What started as 2 frozen grants back in January, funds for at least 1 have been unfrozen, if you will, because there's been a number of lawsuits, and I want to publicly thank the State Attorney General, Charity Clark, for her leadership, among other attorney generals throughout the country, to challenge illegal actions by the administration. But I'll tell you, as an administration, or as a local municipality, we have a lot of federal grants, multiple years of federal grants, and the uncertainty that this presents about what comes next and what gets frozen, let alone where there are federal employees to even administer grants that are supposed to flow in terms of cash flow, is a significant challenge for the city, because most federal grants are designed where we front the money and get reimbursed later. So we're doing our due diligence across departments to understand where our risk is, how do we be smart and strategic about making sure funds are flowing to us, and then how do we make a contingency plan if grants are no longer available, because we cannot predict what comes in the future. I'm going to save my highlight in the last 48 hours for last and mention something briefly on climate. I will be announcing later this week our 22 climate advisors who will begin work at the end of March, looking at the state of the city's citywide climate strategy thus far, and making recommendations on where the gaps are, where we can do better within, again, the means of the city. Those 22 advisors include 16 community members and/or subject experts, 4 city staff, and 2 city councilors, which I appreciate. Councilor Niebeser and Councilor McKnight, who will be joining that team to get to work over the course of the spring to do to come up with recommendations at the end of the spring, early summer or so. It will be co-chaired by a city staffer, Jen Green from Burlington Electric Department, and a community member from the New North End, Grace Odell, who is the NOFA Vermont Executive Director. They'll start with an inventory that's already been created about what we're doing now, which is 12 pages long, which single space, which shows you how much the city's really been already up to, but then how do we build from there? And then a final, just good feel moment. I was hosting Girl Scouts on Sunday here in City Hall. There was about 20 of them from all over the city talking about municipal government on a Sunday morning, and they were excited. So I was proud to give them a tour of City Hall. They all got city pins. They asked a lot of questions about the mayor's office and how city government works, and it gives me great hope. I always tell my staff, if anything requested with young people, I will come any hour of the day, any day of the week, because they are the future of Burlington, and it continues to remind me why I do this work and why we need to really put our best foot forward to lead this city and make sure that we make this city not only safer, but more positive, more affirming, safer, inclusive for the folks who live here now, these young people, and the future young people of the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. The time is now 6:30 p.m., which is the time certain for public forum, and so we will go ahead and open public forum now. Under our council rules, we'll first hear from Burlington residents here in City Hall, and then among those Burlington residents online. We'll then repeat this process for non-Burlington residents. As a reminder, if you want to participate online, you need to have signed up at least an hour in advance through the City Council's website. Each speaker, both in person and online, will be provided 2 minutes. When I call your name, if you are here in person, please come forward to the table, bring the microphone close, hit the push button, and make sure the green light is illuminated. For those online, I will promote you and let you know once you've been unmuted. When providing comments, please direct them to me as the chair and not to any other individual, including individual councilors or the mayor. It is important that City Hall remain a safe place for those who serve, those in attendance, and those watching our meetings. The council respects and values the diversity of opinions and perspectives on public issues. We ask, however, that all comments be free from individualized attacks, hate, harassment, obscenities, or other derogatory language about other people or groups based on any protected characteristic. We also ask that public comments avoid conduct which is unreasonably loud, disruptive, or discourteous. If I interrupt a speaker at any point, it will be because I'm providing the speaker an opportunity to proceed in accordance with these rules. If public comment continues in violation of these rules, I reserve the right to end public comment at that point in time. We have 14 Burlington residents signed up online, 1 non-Burlington resident here in person. We have 2 Burlington residents online and 1 non-Burlington resident online. The first Burlington resident here in person is Julie Masuga, who will be followed by Aspen Cooper.
Let me take my mask off. Using an overdose prevention site while struggling with substance abuse disorder is incredibly brave. It's a vulnerable moment that can be the difference between life and death for people in dire situations. These sites need to be as welcoming and accommodating as possible with low barriers for use. Infiltration by the government, namely the Democratic Party and co-sponsors of this resolution, flies in the face of that need for privacy and safety. I don't want to imply that only the homeless struggle with addiction, as these sites would be useful to everyone, but it's hard to deny that this is another attack on the growing homeless population. Knowing that a city councilor who voted to have you evicted, take away your limited tenants' rights, or destroy encampments like Sears Lane in the dead of winter during a pandemic is also going to be the person watching as you prepare to inject or consume drugs is intimidation. Sure, city councilors should have tours of these sites like these to learn how they operate, how to support community members that might need them, but why the need to invade people's privacy? The Democrats in particular have campaigned hard to keep drug use out of our, quote, collective living room. And now they're demanding entry to the one space that would have allowed drug use to be done safely and privately. This may well cost lives. These counselors are bullies that have repeatedly referred to as incarceration as a form of housing and continually demonized drug use and poverty. If these counselors truly want to be allies to those using, they would understand that these spaces need to feel safe. All of these things can likely be said of emergency shelters as well, and I deeply look forward to seeing these resources expanded. I will add that I want to voice my support for my amazing counselor, Milo Grant, who has consistently been one of the few politicians who tells things like they are and does what needs to be done to protect her community. I know that she's been under attack lately, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Our next speaker is Aspen Cooper, who will be followed by Catherine Bach.
These chairs are very slidey. First, I would like to voice my support for counselors who are advocating for the humanity and well-being of all people. I am proud to be represented by Milo Grant, and I'm grateful for her truth-telling and willingness to engage in difficult topics. I'm sad that vitriol on social media and official letterhead is considered an okay way to treat each other. Milo has truly been an example of the best that city councilors can be, and I'm grateful that she is part of our community and leadership. I would also like to voice my concern around the resolution regarding access to city-owned buildings and programs. I really question the integrity and intent of this resolution. The co-sponsors have a long history of opposing resolutions to increase housing, voting against just cause eviction, against a resolution to recognize the rights of houseless community members, and valuing process over the lives and well-being of people at Sears Lane. This is all clearly visible in the voting record. Why should city councilors be entitled to entering these spaces? Why are they entitled to witnessing community members at what may be their most vulnerable points when they have not shown us that they can hold that with safety and care? And why would community members feel safe using these resources knowing this? As someone who works with unhoused people and folks who use substances, I believe that this resolution will be an active deterrent to people using these needed resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Catherine Bach, who will be followed by Romeo von Herman. I'm sorry, the microphone was turned off. You need to turn it back on again. The push button right on the microphone.
Now?
There you go.
Yes. My name's Catherine Bach. And first, I want to thank you all for the work you do. I know that you're all trying to do what is best for the residents of Burlington. I had this thought of what would it look like for some intelligent being out in space looking down on us and seeing all the work we're trying to do to make things better and wondering, why are they so angry at each other for the scarves they wear? Why are they so angry at one person who's trying really hard to support the most vulnerable in the community? And I don't know the answers to those questions either, but I'm here to support Milo Grant for all the great work she's been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Romeo von Herman, to be followed by Leanne Tufot.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mr. President, councilors, city staff, and fellow Burlingtonians. I'm here to share my support for deliberative item agenda 6.3, which is the Green Mountain Transit funding and sustainability. I believe this resolution emphasizes the critical funding need for robust, reliable, and safe public transit in our city. As you all know, our city continues to grow and evolve. As such, public transit is a vital role in ensuring accessibility for all residents, particularly those who rely on public transit for their daily commuting. Addressing funding need challenges is essential not only for maintaining current service levels, but also exploring innovative solutions that can enhance the efficiency, effectiveness of public transportation here in Burlington and around the region. To achieve sustainable public transit in our city, stakeholders, including this council and our state government, must establish permanent funding measures that encompasses permanent federal, state, and local support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leanne Tufot, to be followed by Amy Malinowski. And apologies if I mispronounced your last name there, Leanne.
Good evening. Thanks for hearing me out tonight. So my name is Leanne Tufot. You almost got it right.
Okay.
And I'm here this evening to voice my support for Resolution 64 that guarantees access to city-owned buildings and programs for city councilors. I am concerned about the restriction preventing our elected officials from entering the Miller Center, which is a city-owned facility that has operated as a low-barrier emergency cold weather shelter on numerous occasions this winter. I support both this issue and moving forward really a more collaborative, thoughtful approach to shelter operations. I want to begin with that first and foremost, I believe that everyone has a right to emergency shelter. No one in our community should be left without a safe, warm place to sleep during extreme cold weather. However, I'm not sure that the Miller Center is the appropriate location for this. I believe that as a community members, we must also ensure that there are appropriate measures are in place to safeguard another group of vulnerable members of society, and that's our children. That includes children at the Frog and Toad Child Care Center, which operates within the Miller Center and has shared interior doors with the space that is used for shelter operations. And this includes the children who attend C.P. Smith Elementary School, Hunt Middle School, and both of which directly neighbor the Miller Center. My son, who's 3.5, attends Frog and Toad, so this issue is both very personal and important to me. Particularly concerning to me is the overlap between shelter guests leaving and children arriving for school during the morning hours. While I have reviewed the city's extreme cold weather shelter plan and commend it as a really good starting point, I write emergency plans by trade for myself for a living. I'm particularly concerned that guest belongings are not screened in any way for weapons or drugs. Recent police logs show multiple incidents at the shelter. For example, on January 22.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay,
We're at time.
that's okay.
Thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Amy Malinowski, who will be followed by Stephen Chizza. I should also mention that if you have comments and want to circulate them to the council in writing, certainly anyone here in person or online is more than welcome to do that. Thank you.
I don't know if I have to press anything. Okay, I think I'm good. Hi, my name is Amy. I live in Ward 8. I'm here today to voice my support for councilors who are advocating for the well-being and safety of working people in our city and who are standing in solidarity with humanity. I'm so relieved and proud to have someone like Milo Grant on our city council. I've seen how she moves and shows up, not only in city council meetings, but also in smaller city committee meetings, as well as out and about in community gatherings. I've learned so much from seeing how she moves with so much integrity, consistently centering the dignity, care, and belonging of those made most vulnerable and those most unsupported in our community. I've also seen her be willing to have her mind changed and work collaboratively with others. She's somehow everywhere and knows everyone, which is not magical, it's intentional. She's clearly prioritized being rooted and knowing what is actually going on in our community. I'm not sure what more we could want from a city leader. I truly, truly feel heart-deep gratitude for the presence Milo gifts our community. So with all that said, it's disgusting and disturbing to hear that she's having to deal with attacks directed at her, either by other city councilors or on social media. We're living in a divisive and scary time, and the last thing we need is for our elected representatives to be attacking each other when they should be working together to make Burlington safe and livable for all people. Also, city councilors don't need to be able to walk into and observe emergency shelters. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephen Chizza, to be followed by Sequoia.
Hi, my name is Stephen Chizza, and I'm a resident in Ward 8. I'm here to voice my support for Councilor Grant, who stands for the well-being and safety of all people in Burlington. I deeply admire her ability to look at all issues that our city is facing in a holistic manner. Over the past few weeks, I have been deeply troubled by the personal attacks I have seen directed at Councilor Grant by other councilors, as well as on social media. I believe, and I hope all of you do too, that we don't want to live in a Burlington where councilors do personal attacks on each other. I know everyone in this room or on Zoom right now has the power to make personal attacks between councilors a thing of the past. I believe all of you can make that possible. I also believe we don't want to live in a world where our digital spaces are filled with hate targeted at our councilors and neighbors. On social media, I try to do my best to stand up against that. I know we, as a community, can cover a lot more ground if councilors make an effort to call out and stand up to these personal attacks on social media too. Please help. I know it's not easy to be a city councilor. I appreciate all of you taking the time and effort it takes to be a councilor. On a separate note, as previous speakers have mentioned, city councilors don't need to be able to walk in and observe emergency shelters. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen Chizza. Our next speaker is Sequoia, who will be followed by Emma Wall-Curry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sequoia Peace. I'm homeless, and I'm speaking against that resolution. First off, I'm a micro businessman. I'm lawful. I don't do drugs. And like this resolution is doing, it's disrespectful. And it's divisional. There has been very few problems at the shelter, and Sarah Russell and her staff does amazing job to mitigate all those problems. So you're not looking at those things. What this resolution does, it makes us, it doesn't treat us like humans. It treats us like animals, you know? We need our privacy, you know? And we need respect. We deserve that. Since being homeless, I dealt with a lot of disrespect. I had ARs pointed at me, and I was detained illegally. I have not heard from the city. You know why? It's because I'm homeless. If it was a rich man, there would have been immediate response. And again, I want to thank Sarah Russell, her staff. They were wonderful. You know, I have dogs. There was a night that it was 11 below zero, and they accommodated my dogs and my family. Do you know what it's like being out there when it's 11 below zero? I've been out in my car when it's 11 below zero. My hands hurt. My feet still hurt because of that. We need these shelters. We do not need the city council watching us. We need our privacy. We're all dealing with stress and anxiety because we're on the street. So I'm please asking you who created this resolution to please stop it here. Vote no, take a step back, and let's start building housing for everybody. Let's build micro apartments that'll be affordable. Where are our tiny houses? Let's build housing for,
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sequoia.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you. Our next speaker will be Emma Walcurry, to be followed by Fareed.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Emma Walcurry from Ward 6. I was raised a low-income Vermonter, and my father struggled with addiction throughout adolescence and into his adulthood. He would not have found recovery without loving community and safe spaces for healing. I am here to raise my deep concerns about the resolution guaranteeing access to city-owned buildings and programs for city councilors. Emergency shelters are a highly complex environment and very difficult operations to run. The people coming to the shelters are extremely vulnerable and fragile situations, living in highly stressful and traumatic conditions, as we just heard from the previous speaker. To have these spaces under surveillance by our politicians, some of whom would criminalize such vulnerability, is an invasive and harmful breach of privacy and dignity. Regarding this resolution and the sponsors behind it, I am curious about the intention. I also have questions. What are your expectations of being granted access to such intimate, vulnerable, and complex spaces? Are you trained and able to hold the complexities that exist in such a space? What information are you hoping to obtain? Are there less invasive methods to collect such information via reporting and data without being physically in the space? How will government presence impact operations and services? How will it benefit our most vulnerable neighbors who need these services? And how would it feel for you to have the government present in your private appointments or in spaces where you are highly vulnerable? I am not only deeply concerned by this resolution, I am saddened by it. Our elected officials in Burlington should offer grace, compassion, and lack of judgment for those who provide emergency services and those who urgently need them. Instead of bringing resolutions like this that put our vulnerable community at risk, please focus on improving and expanding the services that we do have that we so urgently need. We all deserve access to care and services in safe spaces.
Thank you. Thanks. Our next speaker will be Fareed, to be followed by Andre Clark. I don't know, Fareed, sorry. I don't know if, is your mic on?
Can you hear me?
Yes. You have a good booming voice without it, but that's better, so thank you.
I really appreciate the willingness to provide oversight for city programs. There is this program that the city's been running that's taken a lot of money and has actually been very bad for public safety. It is run out of the Anthony J. Pomerleau building. In the last 12 years, during the last mayor's administration, more Burlingtonians have been killed by the police than all of the previous administration combined in history. The police has been allowed to get away with killing our neighbors, and we keep putting more money into this program, where a lot of it actually could be spent in housing. And if you want to provide oversight, how about we start there? That's like the biggest item on our city budget. And really make sure that for what we're paying for, we're getting through safety. We're getting through community safety. Instead of criminalizing our homeless neighbors, how about we build them housing? So I really appreciate Milo Grant, who've been standing up for us. Unfortunately, the majority of the city council has been a part of the deteriorating accountability of our public safety officers who are supposed to be ensuring our public safety. And I really appreciate that Milo has been standing up, and I wish more of you would take an example from how Milo has been fighting for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Fareed. Our next speaker is Andre Clark, and then is Anna Wagling here in person? Okay, great. I saw you online too, so we'll take you here in person. Go ahead, Andre.
My name is Andre Clark, Ward 2. I have experienced homelessness, worked in a variety of low-barrier shelters, and focused my graduate studies on improving the mental and physical health of people experiencing homelessness. I come here today with great concern about the proposed resolution on guaranteeing access to city-owned buildings and programs for city councilors. This resolution targets emergency shelters and overdose prevention sites because they provide services to people experiencing homelessness and people with substance use disorder. It states that public oversight is important when our community's most vulnerable residents are involved, implying that people without homes or people who use drugs need to be observed like animals at the zoo. At the same time, the resolution says it will assure that visitations respect the privacy and dignity of individuals using these services. How can people's privacy and dignity be respected when the city council can simply come into some of the only safe spaces our neighbors have to monitor their every move? This resolution does the opposite and strips people of privacy, dignity, and emotional safety. There is no chance city councilors would be okay with politicians having access to their homes, monitoring their behaviors, or intruding on their privacy. Why is it then okay for them to do the same to people simply because they don't have a home or use a substance? It is not the role of the city council to have access to and oversight of people's lives. The city council's role is to ensure the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of the citizens it was elected to represent. These include people who use substances and people who access emergency shelters. People without a home and people who use substances are just as deserving of their elected officials having their best interests at heart as those with a home. Please vote no on this resolution. City staff and their community partners have successfully operated shelters and provided harm reduction services for a long time. They do not need the city council to micromanage and tell them how to run emergency shelters or harm reduction services.
Thank you, Andre. Our next speaker will be Anna Wagling, to be followed by Lee Morgan.
Hello. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Wagling. I'm a resident of Ward 2, and I work with underserved populations. I'm speaking tonight regarding Resolution 6.4, which is asking for guaranteed access of city councilors to city-owned buildings and programs. I have volunteered at multiple extreme cold weather shelters alongside city, CHT, CVOO, and Howard Center staff. I apologize if I'm missing any organizations. The threshold for this shelter to be open is a temperature of -10 degrees. We work with some of the most vulnerable community members who feel safe enough to be in a space with us because they trust and they know us. When the shelter opened first in 2023, there were 21 people. In January, there were 90. Trust takes time. These folks live on the fringe of society and need support to access basic resources. Allowing trust to be compromised in these safe spaces deters people from accessing services, and ultimately, this is detrimental to the city as a whole. City councilors and other members of the public are always welcome to tour the space before the shelter is in operation. However, like most or all shelters, whether city or privately run, once they are in operation, it becomes a safe space for those who need it and often don't have it. Passing this resolution will violate the trust and privacy of folks experiencing homelessness, point blank. Our community members deserve dignity and respect. just like the rest of the community. This resolution will strip it away. I urge councilors to vote no on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lee Morgan, to be followed by Rachel Siegel.
Hello, Lee Morgan, Ward 3. I'm also a formerly unhoused resident. So let me get this straight. You want to surveil unhoused people in shelters, just observe, right? Just keeping an eye on things, totally neutral, nothing weird, okay? Meanwhile, a resolution author is on record saying we should worry about unhoused people near playgrounds because they might be sex offenders. Burlington has 70 registered sex offenders. They're all accounted for online. There's no big mystery there. At the same time, both resolution sponsors took campaign donations from an actual convicted peeping Tom. The difference? That guy's wealthy and housed, and a lawyer. Does the Democratic caucus expect people to feel safe when you walk into a shelter? The same party who fought to remove a dumpster and a porta potty from an encampment? The same party who fought to increase fines for public urination while making it impossible for people to access a bathroom in the first place? This resolution is not about safety, it's about control. I'll take the remainder of my time to express gratitude for a dear friend and role model for enabling me to have the most meaningful town meeting day of my life. Since I've been in Burlington until this year, I've lived in the New North End and had representation, with the exception of Ali Jang, that was completely at odds with my rights, my lived experience, and for the first time, I got to experience having progressive representation, and I just wasn't expecting how great that feels, and it was the honor of a lifetime to vote for my dear friend, role model, Milo Grant. I love you, Milo.
Our next speaker is Rachel Siegel, who will be followed by Gray Beretta.
Hello, Council President, Council, Mayor, staff. Nice to be here. I'm Rachel Siegel. I'm a Ward 2 resident, and I want to speak to two things. One, the oversight of city-run buildings and programs. I think most everything that I wanted to say has been said better than I could do it with, a lot more experience, lived experience and professional experience with these issues. But the thing that came to mind to me is this idea, well, if it's ours, like it's city-run and we're the city leadership, we should have access, and this should have access. And I was thinking about renters' rights, and do the landlords have the right to come anytime? No, they actually don't. So I don't know if that framing shifts anybody's thinking about anything, but I just think, get a tour. Don't show up unannounced. It's so rude. And I wanted to offer this song to Milo, and I know I'm not supposed to speak directly to Milo, so Council President, I hope that you will allow me to share my deep love and gratitude for Councilor Grant, who is a rock star, role model, hardworking, honest, caring woman who takes feedback, hard feedback. Well, we do not always agree, Councilor Grant and I, and we can have those conversations. And that is something that I value more than people who I get along with full time. And I appreciate Councilor Grant. The world is a better place because she's in it. And it's just the instrumental version. But if you know, you know. Is it okay for me to approach the table?
Sure. All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Gray Beretta, and then our last Burlington resident here in person is Aspen Overy.
Hi, I'm Gray Beretta. I live outside. I'm one of the unhoused, but Burlington is my home, so I'm not homeless. I was really appreciating what I was hearing today, as far as the response to this possible attempt at observing us in a very complex situation. What I want to highlight, I think, just another view, is that when you hunt an animal, when you are out tracking an animal, going to where they eat and where they sleep is often what's recommended in most hunting skill training groups, guides, whatever, and that this is something that is often practiced. And where we eat, we now have a sheriff monitoring us. When we have food brought out to us in City Hall Park, there's probably about 15 to 30 times where cruisers pass by and stop. Just to think about that normalizing the same practices that somebody that a predator uses for prey is the practice that we're talking about here. I guess, and I'd also like to just point out that the shelters lower the body count. I'm visiting multiple people in the hospital who have experienced exposure during the times when the shelters are not open. Also, just
Thank you, Gray.
ask us.
Thanks.
You can talk to us about
Thank you.
the shelters.
Thank you. Our last speaker, Burlington resident here in person, is Aspen Overy. Then we would turn online. We have one Burlington resident online in Andrew Cronigfeld. Andrew, I do not see you currently on the participant list. If you're on here with a different name or number, if you could use the raise hand function. If Andrew's not available, we would come back here in person to non-Burlington residents, and it would be Bruce Wilson. Aspen, please go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. So I'm here to speak on issue 6.4 partially, and just add my voice to the chorus of people who have been asking this issue to be reconsidered. I cannot state this nearly as articulately as others, but I just want to add my voice. And in addition, to say that, right, that when people serve homeless people at City Hall Park with People's Kitchen, something that is stressed often is the importance of dignity, the importance of providing dignity to people who are so often stripped of it, right? And that is essential to what should be done. Yeah, and so what this resolution does, I think, is attempts, and I understand that it's been postponed. However, what I think this resolution does is it continues to attempt to strip dignity from these people in one of the few places where they can have it, right? And I think it is seriously flawed of the city council and of the representatives proposing this to want to take that dignity away. And in addition, I just want to also add my voice of support for Councilwoman Grant and add that and say that this series of racist attacks that have been leveled against her are profoundly, profoundly concerning, given especially the city council's history with previous administrations, given the state's history with the harassment of Kaya Morris, and I think that members of the city council, people in this city, and in addition, need to seriously reconsider their approach towards harassing Black women. Thank you. It's in the last 15 seconds of my time.
We would now turn to Burlington residents online. First of all, I don't know that I have the capability to promote. I think I'm a panelist, but not a host, if there's a way to make me a co-host. The one Burlington resident we have online is Andrew Cronigfeld. I don't see Andrew's name on here. I do see a phone number, 3733. Is that, do we know? Okay. So if Andrew's able to get online, then we will come back to Andrew once we see him here. Until then, I think we would come back here in person for non-Burlington residents. The one non-Burlington resident we have is Bruce Wilson, and then we would turn to non-Burlington residents online. We have one speaker, Karen Sita. Bruce, you're welcome to come to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Milo, I'm gonna have to put that Wu-Tang Clan song when I get home. I was out playing that when I get to the crib. Man. Anyway, so I'm Bruce Wilson, and Vermont Human Rights Commissioner, as well. I was on Vermont Mental Health. The governor appointed me to those two positions. And I'm also Art So Wonderful Director and General Partner. And so I just want to, first of all, I want to thank people who helped us, Romeo and Nancy Harkins from Ward 6, Joan Shannon, who gratefully give us our own, write our own check for us to help us out. And then Councilor McKnight, thanks Becca, and Chapin Spencer, who also helped us with his own personal check, and our honorable mayor, who helps us. And so on May 15th of this year, well, first before I go there, as you can see, it's like tons of graffiti, more than last year, all around, primarily around downtown, because that's where, if you want to put some graffiti up, that's where you want to put it. And so downtown, so you can see it. But anyways, so we got a lot of cleanup to do. May 15th, we're going to do and I'll get the announcements to the mayor's office, a graffiti cleanup and mural project. And it's going to be, Champlain College administrators, is May 15th, one of their days. And they're going to come out with like 15 people, 10, 15 people to help us do it in the community, other community people. Well, I don't know how many sites we're going to clean up right now, but it's going to be quite a few. And so basically, I would hope for all your other city council will get on Ward 6 agenda, because they're going to, Ward 6, when I presented to them, I think that was last week, Becca, I said that they're going to help us, continue to help us, and they helped us last year too with some graffiti abatement repellent, which was like $550 a gallon, 5 gallons, and they bought 2 of them. And so I just want you guys, other city council to help us out. You know, Art So Wonderful has been doing this since 2003. We continue to do it. We don't know many people who do this stuff for code enforcement officers, Bill Ward, and so that's it.
Thank you, Bruce. I did see Andrew online for a moment. I did not see him right now, but certainly if he gets back on, we will turn to him. At the moment, the one speaker I see signed up, non-Burlington resident, is Karen Sita. Karen, just hold on one moment, and I'm going to share the timer here, and then we'll promote you.
Can I be heard?
Yes, please go ahead.
First of all, Milo, just do what I do. Just say, you know, I'm cute. My haters aren't. That's all you got to do, girl. Fight through it all. That's what black women do. We just say we're cute and keep it pushing. Okay, second of all, people always, oh, by the way, yesterday was National Barbie Day, so shout out to all my Barbies. I don't support all women, but I definitely support my Barbies, so shout out to all my Barbies, and they come in all races. Real quickly, you know, a lot of people ask me often, you know, if I'm constantly dealing with racism in Vermont, and I tell people often I'm too cute to be dealing with racism. What I deal with is the spirit of corniness, which is running rampant in this country and in the city of Burlington. People say Burlington has changed, what they're really trying to say is Burlington has gotten corny. Your mayor is the corniest of them
Karen,
all.
I'm going to ask that you please direct your comments to me and not the mayor individually.
I didn't say about her, I'm just talking about her position. The highest woman in power, how about that? Okay, the corniest of them all. And you know what, this whole resolution of having surveillance, it's not because they want to surveil, it's because the woman in high position cannot deal with punches. And she knows if something goes down, I want to be ahead of it. Why do you think she put a muzzle on the chief of police, saying no press conference? Because she can't handle, I keep trying to tell y'all, she's corny in nature, in conduct, in the way she governs her administration. It's corniness. It's not racism. It's not, I don't deal with that. I'm too cute for racism. I talk about spirit of corniness. The court's corny. All of it is corniness. To hate someone because of the color of their skin, corny. To hate someone because they believe in a Jewish God, corny. To hate someone because they believe in a Christian God, corny. It's just corniness. Everything she does, and I try to tell the city over and over, the way she's trying to tell young children that you were born in the wrong body, corny. The way that she believes that
Karen,
parents don't have the
please
right.
direct your comments to me as the
The
chair.
woman in power believes in this, okay? Believing that parents don't have the right to be involved in their children's life is corny, especially regarding the transgender thing. It's corny. Corny, corny, corny. I rebuke that in our city.
All right. Andrew, I do see you here now as well, so we will turn to you as our last speaker. You should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. Andrew, I've prompted you to unmute yourself if you're able to do that. Yep, you should now be able to go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, I was just wanting to speak out against the thing with city councilors going into homeless shelters. I think that makes no sense at all. I don't know why the city wastes their time and dumb stuff like this when we have so many issues in our city. So I just wanted to say that, and thanks for your time.
All right, thank you, Andrew, for being here. That was the last speaker that we had signed up for public forum. So we will now go ahead and close public forum at 7:11 p.m. The next item on our regular council agenda is item 3, City Council General City Affairs, but we did have our Board of Civil Authority meeting warned for 7 p.m. and our Local Control Commission meeting warned for 7:05 p.m. Mayor, if you were prepared for it, I'd be happy to turn the Board of Civil Authority over to you. And I will note, in discussions with you and the city attorney, I think historically we perhaps have made a mistake of my chairing the Board of Civil Authority, but looking at the charter, it is the City Council with Mayor presiding that is the Board of Civil Authority. And so moving forward, happy to turn these meetings over to you, Mayor.
I'm sure you
and
are.
I will briefly recess the City Council meeting at 7:11 p.m.
Thank you, President Travers. And I will call to order the Board of Civil Authority for the City of Burlington at 7:12 p.m. or so. And our first item is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda?
I move to.
Moved by Councilor Bergman, seconded by Councilor Travers. Is there any discussion on the agenda before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Before we move on to the consent agenda, I just want to specifically thank the Clerk Treasurer's Office and Sarah Montgomery, who heads up our elections. They did an outstanding job. All of our ward clerks are inspectors of elections and all the election workers in general. It is a real love of community to help make sure our local elections run so smoothly. So thank you, and sorry I didn't bring donuts this time. I brought clementines. On to our second item, the consent agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Moved by Councilor Bergman, seconded by Councilor Shannon. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And with no further business for the Board of Civil Authority, I will adjourn in record time the Board of Civil Authority at maybe 7:14 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We will now open the Local Control Commission meeting at 7:13 p.m. The first item on our agenda here is the agenda, and for a motion on that, I will turn to the Chair of our License Committee, Commissioner Shannon.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. We only have a consent agenda before the Local Control Commission, and for a motion on the consent agenda, I turn to you, Commissioner Shannon.
I move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Seeing no other business before the Local Control Commission meeting, I will adjourn the Local Control Commission at 7:14 p.m., and we will now resume our regular City Council meeting at that time. As mentioned, the next item on our agenda is item 3, City Council General City Affairs. Are there any councilors that wish to be recognized on this item?
Well,
Councilor Bergman.
Well, I want to just thank the voters of Ward 2 and the voters of the city for passing the GO bond. I don't know how many people have been around all over the place and seen the number of potholes, have seen the number of puddles, have seen all the stuff that makes it hard to bike. So we've got lots of problems. And I have said consistently that austerity kills, and I'm very happy that the city voters have recognized that as well. So I thank them, and I thank us for the work to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Are there any other councilors that wish to be recognized on City Council General City Affairs? Councilor Grant.
Just a couple of
public safety items. So I talk a lot about strategic plans for recruitment and retention using 21st century tools, social media and digital advertising. So our fire department that has had staffing issues had a lateral transfer recruitment program that they put in place. They created a video in-house, as we previously discussed. They put this video on social media. They paid very small amounts of money to have the video boosted, and they also did digital advertising on media that firefighters read. I plan on getting some more information, such as the final cost per click, and the number of accounts that were engaged. But what we do know is they had a total of 18 qualified applicants. 12 chose to take the online exam. All 12 passed and were invited to a phone interview. From there, 9 were invited to a performance-based panel interview. And they have made conditional offers to 5 candidates. Their expected academy will be starting on April 21st. So I just wanted to bring this because this was a great example of, once again, using 21st century recruitment tools. There are a lot of people in the community who don't understand why I go on and on about social media and digital advertising. This is how people find out about jobs. This is especially how anyone who would be a potential lateral transfer for a police department, they're going to be going online. So we need to find them where they are and do targeted advertising. I continue to hear stories about people that are unhoused being attacked in our streets, and that is very, very deeply concerning. I'll be reaching out to some of our service providers to see if they have gotten more specific information from individuals. As someone said earlier, doing public comment, they felt that they weren't getting the help they need because of their situation, and that is of grave concern to me. I know that a lot of people don't understand that my life has been turned upside down, but in terms of my personal safety, I received a letter today asking me, what am I doing to make sure that Jews are safe in our city, among some other things. I will say that I'm doing the same thing that I do for all Burlingtonians and all residents, especially those of us in marginalized groups and those of us who face discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? All right, seeing none, we will then move to item 5, which is our consent agenda. Item 4 was public forum, so we're moving from 3 to 5 now. I will just note on the consent agenda that in the Board of Finance, item 5.16 on the consent agenda, which is regarding the Westlake Area Condominium Association and an issue related to the Burlington Community Development Corporation, was postponed by the Board of Finance to its meeting on March 24th. So I believe that absent objection before voting on the consent agenda, we need to change the recommended action on item 5.16 to postpone that item as well to our meeting on March 24th. So unless there is any objection, we will consider the recommended action on item 5.16 to be updated to postponement to March 24th. Okay. And I have sent a note to that regard to the city attorney as well as the clerk. With that, we will now welcome a motion on our consent agenda. Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Shannon. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. That now takes us to our deliberative agenda. And the first item on our deliberative agenda is a public hearing regarding zoning amendment 2505, Champlain College bed caps. I will open the public hearing at 7:20 p.m. and ask whether or not there is anyone here in person at City Hall that wishes to speak in the public hearing on this zoning amendment regarding Champlain College bed caps. Anyone here in person that wishes to speak on that item? Is there anyone online that wishes to speak in the public hearing on this item? Would ask that you please use the raise hand function. Yes, I see Nick Anderson. Nick, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hello, Burlington City Council. I am here, but I'm not necessarily need to speak or present or anything like that. Just here to answer any questions if they come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And could you identify who you're here with?
Oh, sure. Sorry, yeah, Nick Anderson. I'm the VP of Planning and Operations at Champlain College.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Is there anyone else online that wishes to speak during the public hearing on the Champlain College bed caps zoning amendment? I'll ask once more, if there's anyone here in person or online, please use the raise hand function that wishes to speak on this item. All right, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing at 7:21 p.m. and now move to item 6.2, which is the deliberative item on the proposed ordinance on this zoning amendment. And on this item, I would welcome Planning Director Charles Dillard. Director Dillard, did you intend on briefly introducing this item, or are you mainly here just to answer any questions that folks have?
Mainly here to answer any questions, but I'm happy to share any information if you'd like.
Okay. Perhaps first what we should do here is turn to Councilor Shannon as Chair of the Ordinance Committee for a motion on the item.
Just had this, and I think I scrolled. I move to waive the reading and adopt the ordinance as amended by, no, that's the wrong one. Oh, it is? Okay. Move to waive the reading and adopt the ordinance as amended by the Ordinance Committee.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Shannon. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Councilor McKnight. Councilor Shannon, did you wish for the floor back on a second?
I just want to say that we did bring this before the Ward 6 NPA, which is the area that would be directly impacted by this change. And while I think we heard some concern from close neighbors, we also heard understanding for the need and general support. And I think that this is going to be a very practical and effective change that could bring more housing and free up some other Champlain housing for the community to actually occupy.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Are there any other councilors that wish to be recognized on this item? Councilor McKnight?
Thank you, President Travers. I agree with what Joan said. We heard a lot of support for this in the Ward 6 NPA and also in my just conversations with neighbors. And as I said before, I really want to commend Champlain College for taking these steps to do their part for to address the housing crisis and to bring more student housing on campus. And something, it was actually new to me to learn that they may be freeing up other buildings throughout the city and, again, addressing the housing crisis and the affordability crisis. One question that I had for you, Charles, that you and I had a chance to talk about, but since I did get a few follow-up questions from members of the public about this, as I've learned, historically, there was a lot of public process in the act of getting the cap placed in the first place. And the question I've heard from members of the public is, if we do this, are we just making it so that Champlain can have an unlimited number of housing units on campus and increase their enrollment in an unlimited, exponential kind of way? I know the answer to those questions is no, but I'm wondering if you can, just for the benefit of the public, walk us through a few of the measures that are in place, to temper those concerns.
Sure. So the amendment eliminates the existing bed caps in the two areas of the campus, the institutional core campus and the academic and the residential core campuses. But it does nothing to the floor area ratio standards that regulate the intensity of development on the Champlain campus. So yes, bed caps are going away, but Champlain College is actually quite close to the floor area ratio limits in the code today. And if they were to develop new housing, they would very likely approach that FAR cap and not be able to go beyond it. If they wanted to continue to increase housing, they would have to continue to convert existing class or office space into housing. Just note that Aiken Hall, which is the first project that I think they're contemplating in this plan, was originally a dorm, was converted to office space, and the trends in their staff and faculty are that more folks are working from home and that office space is not in demand, but what is in demand is housing. And so they're converting that original dorm that was converted to housing, to office back to housing. So to get back to your question, no, there would be caps on the amount of housing on campus, primarily through the floor area ratio standards.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Are there any other councilors that wish to be recognized on this item? Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. I kind of just wanted, I guess, to reiterate what Councilor McKnight asked, because I just wanted it to be clear. So, the removal of the bed cap does nothing about the restrictions that our housing code puts on, like how many beds could actually be somewhere. Like just because the bed cap is gone, that doesn't mean that the institutions can violate our habitable space laws in the housing code, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Councilor Newbeezer.
I just want to thank everybody who worked on this. I think it's exactly the direction that we need to be moving in this city. I've talked a lot about the impact that colleges and universities in our city not housing undergrad students adequately, how much of an impact that can cause on our vacancy rate, which drives up rent and decreases the quality of our housing. I also think, so this is really great news. I also think it is something to reflect on for all of us that, when I was a student at UVM, I was itching to get off campus like as quickly as possible because I didn't want to live in a dorm. As far as I understand it, some of this change, at least in part, was prompted because students are actually communicating to their college that the housing conditions are so bad downtown around quality, around price, that they actually want to go back into housing provided from their college. So I think it highlights the need to take some really bold action the next year around housing, around making sure that we are holding folks who aren't keeping up their housing accountable. And I'm excited to do that work with this body. But thank you for all your work, Charles.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Are there any other councilors that wish to be recognized on this item? Okay. Seeing no one else in the queue, Director Dillard, anything further from you? No. Okay, great. Seeing no one else in the queue, we will go to a vote on the item. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Director Dillard, for your work on this, as well as Nick Anderson. Thank you for joining us online. I appreciate your being here. Okay, that now takes us to item 6.3, a resolution regarding Green Mountain Transit funding and sustainability. The main sponsor of this resolution is Councilor Barlow, the chair of our TUC committee. And Councilor Barlow, I would turn to you for a motion on the item.
Sure, I would waive the reading and adopt the resolution and ask for the floor back after a second.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Seconded by Councilor Litwin. Councilor Barlow, the floor is yours.
I think before I speak, it looks like we have a General Manager Clayton Clark from GMT and Director Spencer here. So I guess they're going to say a few words, and then I can make some comments.
Great.
Just real quickly, not to delay, I'm Clayton Clark, General Manager for Green Mountain Transit, here to show appreciation.
Can you pull the microphone a little closer, Clayton? Sorry, I think it's on, but.
Here to show appreciation for Burlington's support of GMT, which is second to none. Very happy to have Chapin Spencer, one of our Green Mountain Transit Commissioners on the Board of Commissioners here, and also two of our JEDI committee members with Bruce and Romeo. And although our JEDI Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee will be making some changes because of the federal changes. So, but wanted to be here in case you had any questions and just super appreciate the support that you all are providing to GMT.
Councilor Barlow?
Okay, well, thank you. It is unfortunate that we find ourselves back here again advocating for the necessary funding to keep our only mass transit option open and viable, but we are. And GMT continues to face an uncertain future and almost a certain need for service reductions that will further undermine GMT's operation. If we want to get people out of their cars, reduce our parking needs, provide affordable transportation options, and meet our climate goals, then we need a convenient urban bus service with short headways. And so I'm hoping that other council members here will support this and we'll have a unanimous vote and send a strong message to Montpelier that we need them to adequately fund GMT and sustainably fund GMT so they can do some strategic planning and not constantly be firefighting for the funds they need to operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Are there any other councilors that wish to be recognized on this item? Councilor Bergman.
I actually would appreciate maybe an update as current as can be on what's happening in the legislature and what's happening with the administration.
Absolutely. So I can tell you, first focusing on the state legislature, that we were pleasantly surprised with the governor's budget, came in with some extra funding for us, so that we will not be looking to make another $1.2 million worth of reductions this June. I'm very thankful that we'll only need to make about $500,000 worth of reductions, so much less, more than we would like. I can tell you the other big topic that's at the State House this year is whether or not GMT should be broken up so that we would return to our urban mission only instead of being a dual urban and rural agency. I can tell you that seems to have some momentum, but it slowed a little bit, and too much to hazard a guess of whether the legislature will act upon that. In terms of the federal administration, one of the things that we're weighing right now is that we are supposed to be ordering another 5 electric battery buses. Those are about $1.1 million apiece. We've been told by the FTA that they're not sure that they can guarantee that they will give us the money once those buses arrive. And so we have to figure out whether or not we want to take the risk associated with ordering those, knowing that when they arrive next year, we may not have the funds. And so that's the biggest thing that we've been facing with the change of administration.
Thank you. I think that as much light can be shed on all of these issues, both the positive and the negative, are really important. And I know that we'll have to deal with this in our budget coming up. Regardless of whatever happens, we'll have to be dealing with it since we have a share that we've got to put in. So thanks for this work and keep the fight up.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman, and thank you all to all the TUC members. Really feel like that committee is kind of becoming a home for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there any other councilor that wishes to speak on this resolution? Councilor Litwin.
Thanks. Just really quickly, I wanted to say, and I don't want to speak for all members of TUC, but we did discuss this, and we didn't really feel we had the shared time to have a special meeting right before town meeting day to kind of formally move this through the two, please correct me if I'm wrong, Chair, formally move this through the two committee. And so I would say this comes with the informal support of the entire two committee. And I invite my colleagues to correct me if I am misspeaking for them. And I just want to thank you for all the hard work you're doing in Montpelier to try and keep our buses running. They're so critical, and I think the last time you held those public forums around the larger cuts, so many people came out and were so distressed because of what it meant for their lives. And whether or not they could even get out of their neighborhoods or get to their jobs, or what that meant for their families. So this is really important that we keep an eye on this and that we take this up together and we work collaboratively as a council. And additionally, I'd love to hear perhaps at a future meeting what's going on with JEDI, because my ear perked up, and that's alarming to me because of what's happening at the federal level with conversations around whatever, we'll leave it there.
Happy to do that.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Litwin. And you are right in noting that the resolution is co-sponsored by, among others, all 4 members of the two. So thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. I wanted to first affirm my support of this resolution and of GMT. And you brought up the potential urban-rural split of our mass transit service. And I don't know who needs to hear this in Montpelier, but maybe those in Montpelier who detest Burlington, to put lightly. There's models of this all over the world. Mass public transit and affordable mass public transit has benefits that reach well beyond cities like Burlington, well beyond places like Chittenden County. You don't need to have, even Burlington's not that big, but you don't need to be a city and you don't need to live in the city or just outside of a city to see the benefits that mass transit provides to all people. Councilor Barlow discussed all of the benefits of this service, and my hope is that Montpelier actually does a 180 on this and looks to see how not only can we expand public transit in Burlington, but across to all corners of the state of Vermont. We'll only see benefits from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Are there any other councilors that wish to speak on this resolution? All right, seeing none, we will then go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. So thanks to you both. Thank you, Councilor Barlow, and the other sponsors to this resolution. So next item on our agenda is item 6.4, resolution guaranteeing access to city-owned buildings and programs for city councilors. There were a couple councilors and the mayor who had asked to get in the queue on this item before we got to it, so I will be first turning to Councilor Shannon. I will then be turning to the mayor and then to Councilor Litwin, and then we'll see who else is in the queue. I would just like to take a moment before introducing this resolution to express my appreciation for the city staff and for our state partners and volunteers who have really over the last couple of years in both this administration and the prior administration provided critical shelter support to some of our most vulnerable residents, and would just like to take a moment to express my gratitude to those individuals for providing that service, regardless of how we proceed with respect to future operations and oversight. With that, Councilor Shannon, I would welcome a motion from you on the resolution.
Thank you, President Travers. I move to waive the reading and adopt the amended resolution guaranteeing access to city-owned buildings and programs for city councilors, And to note, that is it's posted on our agenda, and the changes on the amended version are the removal of the overdose prevention sites, the removal of the last paragraph, or the last resolve clause regarding the Miller Center specifically, and adding several clauses about the report back, creating a city policy that respects the privacy and dignity of individuals while providing counselors reasonable access when requested.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilor Shannon on what's posted as Civic Clerk as the amended 2025-03-10 CC Litwin Resolution City Council Access. Is that correct, Councilor Shannon?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I will note that there are track changes reflected in that document. And you requested the floor back, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the floor is yours, Councilor Shannon.
So I first want to say that I understand that some counselors would like to have more time for more discussions on this, and I'm hoping that we can have a robust discussion tonight, because I know that our agenda for the next meeting is pretty full. But if at the end there's a desire to postpone, I'm fine with that. The purpose of this resolution is to assure that the council can meet our obligations per the city charter, which reads, "The administration of all the fiscal, prudential, and municipal affairs of the city and the government thereof, except as herein provided." I'm now seeing I left out part of it. Basically, this section of the charter equally tasks the mayor and the city council with the administration of the city. This comes in response to a communication from the mayor's chief of staff regarding a visitor policy for the emergency shelter at the Miller Center. I had no objection to this policy when it was first presented, because I thought it was for members of the public. It was not until February 17th, when I let the chief of staff know that I wanted to visit the shelter, that the chief of staff informed me that per this policy, city councilors were prohibited from entering the building while the emergency shelter was in operation, even with advance notice. Then I became concerned. Councilors, including myself, have been hearing many things about what is going on at the Miller Center Emergency Shelter. We hear from staff in multiple departments, guests who stay there, human service providers, and parents of children who use the Miller Center. Through these conversations, many of us have learned both good things and not good things happening at the Miller Center. First, I want to thank and commend all the city staff in CEDO, parks, and other employee volunteers, as well as the street outreach team, our partners at CVOEO and AHS, for their valiant efforts to make the Miller Center work as an emergency pop-up shelter in extreme weather, which is extraordinarily difficult to do. I especially want to thank and recognize Sarah Russell, who has demonstrated the deepest level of commitment to saving the lives of our most vulnerable neighbors who are living outside, unsheltered, and often in poor health. One of the great things that is happening at the Miller Center, from what we hear, is that medical care is being provided to people at the facility that would not otherwise be accessible. And obviously, it is preventing people from dying in our most frigid and adverse weather. However, we have also heard about rampant drug, alcohol, and tobacco use at the Miller Center, which is not in compliance with the state contract. These things are reportedly happening at a facility that is shared with a child care program, after-school program, and many other activities. Councilors generally work with city staff in the mayor's office to address concerns brought to us. When there is a complaint about a road project, it is not uncommon for us to visit the road project to see for ourselves. When there is a complaint about a city program, it is also reasonable for us to visit that program. The mayor and city council are jointly responsible for the administration of the city, and it is our duty and obligation to act, or at least ascertain the accuracy of claims regarding unsafe conditions and practices. After giving notice to city staff on February 17th that I would like to come to the shelter that evening, along with State Representative Abby Duke, and being told the new visitor policy prohibited any such visits now and in the future, Abby Duke and I went to the shelter and were told the same by Sarah Russell at the door as we were escorted from the facility. This new policy did not apply when the Chief of Staff visited the shelter, or Joe McGee, or the mayor herself, and was not voted on by this council. Now it's being used to keep city councilors and state reps from observing a city program for vulnerable adults being run in a city building, also hosting programming for children. At the same time, we are allowing and have visited the privately run shelter in town, been welcomed with open arms. I fully recognize and support the desperate need for a low-barrier emergency shelter and much more help for all those that are living unsheltered. I would like to be a partner both in finding solutions and assuring we have a site that can meet our legal requirements, and more importantly, assure that the needs of our city staff, partners, guests, and community children are met at the same time. We cannot collaboratively find solutions and address problems unless we are being transparent about our circumstances, including providing access to the facility by city decision makers responsible for administration. This resolution is merely to recognize this council as a full partner in resolving challenges and to create transparency as to how our city program is being run, just like members of the mayor's office have done. I would assert that neither the mayor's office, nor CEDO, nor any city employee has a right to ban city councilors from observing city programs. Just like when we do ride-alongs with the police, having policies and procedures in place to allow such access is completely reasonable.
You're coming up on time, Councilor Shannon, just so you know.
No one is asking for unfettered access to go in unannounced. As a city councilor, I've been invited and welcomed at prisons, other emergency shelters, treatment centers, low-income housing, recovery centers, and the needle exchange, none of which were run by the city. But I can't go to our city shelter due to a unilateral policy of the mayor. I want us to have more, better, and safer shelters. I'd like to be treated as a partner in this effort. There is a lot of talk about transparency and collaboration. It's time to walk the walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Mayor, there had been a request that you be next in the queue, if you're prepared for that now.
Thank you, President Travers. I'm actually going to start with our city attorney reviewing the actual state accountability for this emergency cold weather shelter.
Thank you. So I want to start by agreeing that the executive branch and the legislative branch share responsibility for governing the city. For example, Section 116 of the charter, which describes the mayor's duties, outlines that while she appoints department heads are subject to confirmation by a majority of the city council. It goes on to say, Section 116, that department heads shall have such administrative personnel and managerial authority as shall be designated to them by the mayor. So the executive branch and the legislative branch are different branches because there are some duties that they each hold individually. The shelter that was open last year, 2023 to 2024 during the winter, was a longer-term shelter than what we're talking about this year. But it did have a confidentiality clause in its policy, and that's really what we're talking about when we're referring to a visitor policy for the emergency cold weather shelter as well. It's a confidentiality policy that is included in part because the partner that has provided funding for specifically this year, the shelter that has been stood up, I believe, for 9 nights at the Miller Center is CVOEO, the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, with funding that they have received from the state through the Agency of Human Services. The Agency of Human Services has what they call their Consumer Information and Privacy Rule that establishes principles of confidentiality, permissible sharing and disclosures of personal information, procedures relating to consent, and procedures to protect confidentiality, which all extend to CVOEO as an entity that contracts with AHS to provide services, including helping to stand up this emergency shelter. It is not just a matter, in my opinion, it is not just a matter of visitors signing something saying that they consent not to disclose confidential information, but that our shelter staff would have to obtain informed consent from every guest about whether they agreed to have members of the public, including city councilors, visit the shelter while it's operating. With a shelter like last year's shelter that was established at the VFW, which was long-term with regular guests who returned every night, and approximately 30 of them in total, it was more realistic to obtain informed consent from guests prior to a visit. I would submit that that's not realistic when the staff are trying to manage 70, or it's certainly less realistic when the staff are trying to manage 70 to 80 guests who vary from night to night. But it is my opinion that informed consent from the guests is what would be required prior to any visit. I guess that's all I have, unless there's anything else that you wanted me to speak to.
No, I think that is what I wanted to cover in terms of our oversight from the Agency of Human Services, as well as the origins of this particular policy. I want to emphasize that, though, that this policy for our sheltering policy started under the prior administration, so it is inaccurate to say that this was my policy. We, of course, have evolved it. We debrief after every emergency cold weather shelter that has been run since I've been mayor, but it is inaccurate to say that this was unilaterally created by me. It was started under the prior administration, and the bulk of that policy was written when we ran the VFW shelter in the winter of, what would it have been, in 2023 to 2024. I also want to say, as the city attorney was just outlining, myself, as mayor-elect in March of 2024, went to visit that shelter, but we had to get prior consent by every individual there. It took weeks, days, I should say, 2 weeks. Sarah Russell reported to me in order to get that confirmed consent. Now, the problem and difference here, this is a pop-up shelter, often with the changing weather patterns, with 48 hours notice to find safe ratios for staffing, to comply with our policy, to make sure it is open, to be this life-saving critical tool with our unprecedented number of unsheltered people on the streets. It is so much different even than that winter. This is not an every night procedure. There are different people who come. It will create a literal additional barrier to a low barrier shelter that we all know right now is the most needed thing in our city. So this is a really unreasonable overreach by council. I also want to emphasize the fact that, as the city attorney was saying, we have a professional city here. We have professional staff. We have professionals among trusted community partners within CVOEO, Howard Center, et cetera, who volunteer their time. City employees do get paid, but it is not required them to work there. This kind of overreach starts to put at risk our ability to have the confidence of our professional staff to be able to offer this service. Would like councilors to truly reflect on that. This is truly hard work to do, and we do have ways for councilors to come and engage. We have offered tours. We have offered time for people to come ahead and after when guests are gone. That is the appropriate time to engage in that space. I really want to caution that what this resolution shows at the end of the day is a real distrust, not only as me as mayor, but our professional staff, and people are at a breaking point, and we are nowhere near a solution to this critical housing emergency that we are facing. So what does that leave us? People living outside when it is negative 10 degrees? I'm not comfortable with that, and I would really hope that councilors can seriously reflect on the additional barrier that this creates, the additional distrust, as we heard in public comment, that will be made with these critical members of our community. And also reflect on the fact that there is oversight. There's an established policy which we continue to improve upon with debriefs after every time we run this shelter. We have professionals at the table reflecting on this. We just had another meeting today, including the Burlington Police Department, on ways we can tighten our procedures and policies. We need trust in the professionals that we've hired to run these this particular pop-up shelter, and to understand the unique situation that a pop-up shelter presents versus an everyday shelter that is run by COTS and other providers in the city. I also want to emphasize the fact that this particular location is one of only 3 that have been identified under our emergency response plan, which is an entirely separate policy and plan developed by our chief of fire, who is our emergency response director. We have assessed locations. The 3 locations are the Miller Center, this room, Contois Auditorium, and Champlain Elementary. We have no showers in this building. We have an elementary school as a third option. This is an emergency situation in terms of the weather, and that is why we refer to our emergency response plan. There's many ways we could have had this conversation. I am deeply disappointed that this is the option. Not picking up the phone, requesting a meeting, sitting down with me in a respectful way that 2 branches of government should work on such a critical situation to show this community that we can lead forward and come up with real solutions here that center public health instead of politics. And I'm, again, deeply disappointed that this is what we're spending our time on.
Thank you, Mayor. I have in the queue Councilor Litwin, and then Councilor Bergman, and then Councilor McKnight, and then Councilor Carpenter, and then Councilor Grant, and then Councilor Broderick.
Okay. Am I good?
Councilor Litwin, go ahead.
Thank you. I see tonight's resolution as the beginning of a conversation with the administration and my council colleagues, not the finish line. I have supported the Miller Center cold weather shelter to my constituents, and I've met with neighbors of the Miller Center who largely are happy to know that people have a place to go. I do not want to leave people who are suffering and perhaps at their lowest point out in freezing cold, and I support a holistic and humane response to our housing crisis at all levels. But let me be clear that this resolution did not just come out of thin air. No one woke up one morning and decided that this was the best path forward. This resolution is a direct result of a variety of concerns that both call for action as well as public discourse, and tonight I will only speak to a few of what is a growing list. Over the past few months, a number of city employees have shared concerns with councilors around shelter operations, and they do not necessarily feel it's safe to speak out. If that describes you, I encourage you to report any such discouragement to your union or human resources. Statements by the administration that appear to be at times inconsistent or inaccurate related to policy and/or contracts, and important safety concerns worthy of further review that have been raised by those whose children use the Miller Center, which operates a daycare and youth programs, among many others. Is the multi-use Miller Center the best building to host a shelter program that also operates under a harm reduction model and has a no, quote, open drug use policy as cited by the mayor? There are many important questions at hand. Some of those questions have been posed to the administration and some have not been answered. One outstanding question is, why was a reporter given access to the city-operated bus that picks up unhoused Burlingtonians without the express knowledge and consent of those on the bus, and the city councilors are not allowed access, which also appears to be a departure from the policy agreement? Why is that different? And that question was raised to me by a member of the unhoused community who was on that bus, who approached me about that concern outside the Miller Center. Why is the administration not paying for the cleaning contractors with the expertise, equipment, and chemicals needed to properly clean facilities where substances have been used or biohazard events have occurred? Instead, one single dedicated custodian has been taking on the task. And why have other custodians declined to return to the site? Not everyone who is unhoused has substance use disorder. Where do people who seek shelter go to who don't want to be around drug use or are in recovery? How are they served and supported? But perhaps most importantly, in a strong mayor, strong council, co-equal system of government, is it sound policy to keep elected councilors from being able to observe city-run programs operated in city-owned buildings, especially when similar policies do not exist in privately run shelters like those by COTS? Does this lend itself to governmental transparency, or does it have the unwanted effect of eroding the public trust? When I pressed about concerns on February 20th raised by the Child Care Center, it was suggested to me that perhaps they should not renew their lease since it's a city-owned building, and New North Enders cannot afford to lose much-needed child care opportunities. I felt dialogue with the administration was struggling and action was needed to return to our shared goals for a healthy, safe, thriving Burlington. It should be noted on 2/20, I asked for that meeting. The AHS agreement and the Miller Center policies also address substance use in the facility, and that is not being adhered to, and likely is nearly impossible to adhere to. The state supports the rights and obligations of the shelters to create these policies and procedures and encourages their partners to work with local government to address any conflicts. We owe everybody, including all of our dedicated city staff, a process and a policy, and we owe everybody some peace of mind that the Miller Center will remain a safe and accessible place for the community, and that we will find desperately needed space to keep unhoused people from inhumanely dying in extreme cold. And it is my expectation that we figure this out together as co-equal branches of government. I believe this resolution does just that. It kickstarts a much-needed collaborative dialogue that I welcome. And thankfully, we are coming out of the worst of the winter, and now we have more time to discuss it. I've heard a lot of thoughtful reflections during public comment tonight that I would like more time to fairly consider. And I think our administration and our Progressive Caucus colleagues deserve additional time to consider this resolution. And I would welcome continued dialogue around this, and I would support postponing this resolution to enable further process and discussion should that be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. I next have Councillor Bergman, who will be followed by Councillors McKnight, Carpenter, Grant, and Roderick.
Well, the irony of hearing about co-equal, not only branches, but people at the table or working with with our side of the table is just dripping. You know, this was dropped once again on Thursday. I didn't see this before. I didn't get any calls before. Thursday at 4 o'clock. And it was worse than this bad one that we've got in front of us now. There was no outreach to us. Now, I sit on a number of committees, and we have worked through really difficult issues. And we have respectfully brought those to committees of jurisdiction here. We have at times even asked each other to sponsor resolutions. We have not dropped this on a Thursday and then asked for a vote on a Monday for a very controversial thing. Controversial, 90 people were out in the street and needed an emergency shelter in January. And I know a number of other people who were outside my house, living in cars, right, that I asked if they would want to get a ride up there, and they said no because they don't feel comfortable at that. They didn't feel comfortable at that point. There are a lot of people out there, right? If the average guest count, my understanding, has been like 75 of the people that are there. That is significant. I will not reiterate the problems that we heard tonight in terms of confidentiality or the real need to ask each and every individual who is a person that deserves the dignity that I hear people mouth, but is not reflected in this resolution. I mean, we get an amendment tonight that was dropped at 5:15 when the Board of Finance is meeting. Mayor doesn't have a chance. She's chairing that meeting. I mean, this is a pattern and practice which I really hope will change with the next term, because this is broken. Now, there are details in this resolution which are problematic. Not more than 72 hours that you just set forward in this. That's not asking me to begin a conversation. That's asking me to vote on this thing. This is asking me, you've got a number of other report back days. That's not asking me to vote to start a conversation. This is not saying, oh, let's bring this up in the Public Safety Committee, the Committee of Jurisdiction, not have a joint meeting with progressives and Democrats and the mayor's office to try to deal with certain issues. No. Like I said, it is dripping with irony to think that anybody on my side, that I could accept that as being a reasonable interpretation of what we've got here. You want to talk about the problems that may exist there? We need to do that in a reasonable way. This is not that. This thing should just be killed tonight. Killing it tonight will not mean that we will not have that conversation or that we don't have to have that conversation. It's about doing it in a respectful way, in a way that brings us together. But constantly, I get resolution after resolution that basically politicizes and partisanizes this issue. And personally, and let me just end by saying, I'm just plain sick of it. It really, I hope, will end. Thank you.
Our next speaker in the queue is Councilor McKnight, to be followed by Councilor Carpenter. Councilor McKnight.
Thank you, President Travers. First, I just want to reiterate a couple of things that I think are really important, and to me, the reason that this is on the agenda tonight. This resolution is responsive to concerns that a variety of groups brought forward to councilors because they were not being addressed by the administration. That includes members of the public, many of whom are parents of young children who use the child care center, and again, do not feel that the administration has been responsive to their needs. City staff which their reports include contradictions between staff members and their directors, and reports of being discouraged not to speak up. That's deeply troubling to me. And we also heard from patrons of the shelter themselves. But, overall, I just want to zoom out and kind of make a broader point, because what I'm seeing here is similar to really any time in life when I ask or others ask what are really reasonable questions, and then there's resistance, or there's no response, or there is a strange and over-the-top response. Or in this case, when we are told things like,
Point of order.
We may no longer be able.
Excuse me, Councilor McKnight, there's a point of order.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yes, Councilor Newbeeser?
Can we, would it be acceptable to have decorum where we're not characterizing other councilors on the floor as strange, or their rhetoric is strange? That seems like a personal versus policy conversation.
Okay, I mean, I don't think Councilor McKnight's comments in any way broke decorum here, but we'll, generally remind councilors to be mindful of not impugning the motives of their colleagues or individualizing, attacking their colleagues. But I don't think Councilor McKnight's comments rose to that level. Councilor McKnight, you may continue.
Yeah, to be clear, I was not talking about fellow councilors when I was describing strange behavior. But we were told things like, we may no longer be able to operate shelters because you are asking questions. And again, I think that's troubling. And in general, and whenever I face situations like this in life, my response is to then ask another question, which is perhaps more revealing, which is, what exactly is going on in this situation that makes you so uncomfortable answering basic questions? What is it that makes you not want to answer? And unfortunately, that's really where we find ourselves now. We did ask for meetings, as we often ask for bipartisan opportunities for discussion. Those meetings were not scheduled. And I'm committed to seeking answers here and setting up a clearer oversight plan, which of course needs to respect the dignity of people who are in the shelter. And I'll reiterate one more time, some people using the shelter were the people who came forward asking us for help. And that is what we are trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. I next have Councilor Carpenter in the queue.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the intent of this resolution, but I'm saddened, and I don't think this is going to get us where we need to go. We do need to have dialogue and conversation. The city itself has been thrust into the position of operating social service programs, which is new to us. It's not our core mission. We don't have a human service department. And as we move towards more direct services, we need a plan and oversight. The City Council hasn't felt as involved as we should be. I personally do not want to inspect the operations, and I may differ from some of my colleagues, but I do need to be ensured that they're well operated, and we have a process for transparency, and one, most importantly, that citizens can access with questions or concerns. I strongly believe we need a committee or commission who can sort of oversee this as a long-term plan. We have that with other operations in the city, but not really this operation. I am not ready to support this resolution at this time, and I do think we need more robust input from all of our colleagues and our providers who do a great job. I think the CEDO staff and the CVOA staff work really hard. I mean, I've run, many years ago albeit, programs towards the unhoused, and it's exceedingly difficult. And I think as we've expressed, we're kind of a little bit doing it on the fly because we've been forced to by the state. And I think this spring and this summer we need to step back and take the time to really analyze and get a stronger plan that everybody can participate. So I would like to move that we postpone this resolution, perhaps rewrite it and add elements that really talk about how do we provide operation oversight and evaluation as we would with any operating program in the city, not necessarily personally by city councilors, but by the professionals and by the input from the citizens who have their concerns. So again, I'd like to move that we postpone this resolution until March 24th.
Okay. Councilor Carpenter has made a motion to postpone this resolution to our next meeting on March 24th. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilor Barlow. Are you all set, Councilor Carpenter?
Yes.
Okay. So now the question on the floor is on the item to postpone. Are there any councilors that wish to speak on the postponement item? We'll go Councilor Bergman, Broderick, Grant.
You know, we just heard before that March 24th is going to be chock full. Now, I remember city council meetings when I was here till 2 o'clock in the morning. I was a little younger then. I probably can do it now, but that's really not a wise thing in my estimation for us to do on any of the points. You know, postponement under the concepts that Councilor Carpenter is saying is really a let's just take this off the table and redo it. That's really what you're saying. And I don't think that you have heard me or the mayor say that we shouldn't be having these conversations. So to the extent to which, you know, you wanted to begin the conversation, you know, you can say you've begun that conversation. But it makes no sense to me to do that to the 24th, and it would make more sense to me that we just get a group from both sides of the aisle, so to speak, assuming that there's an aisle in between us, to sit down with the administration and have a conversation. We do that on other things. It seems to me totally sensible and totally reasonable to do. This resolution here contemplates conflict in the revision, right? It says, you know, like, and if the mayor and the council president don't agree, then we're going to do this other thing. It would seem to me that this resolution is broken. It needs to go back, and it needs to go back clean and fresh with conversation with staff. We say that we support staff, that we respect staff, and we should give them, in reality, the respect by being at the table to do this. So I actually can't support I can't support this motion to suspend, to postpone. I don't think it's wise at all.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. I have Councilors Broderick, Grant, and then Shannon. I will just remind councilors, as Councilor Bergman just did there, that the question before us is on the postponement motion, and we'll ask the councilors please keep their comments germane to the motion. So Councilor Broderick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I do agree with Councilor Carpenter that an oversight process with collaboration can be made that does not involve city councilors invading the privacy of our most vulnerable individuals. I do think that is possible, but in regards to this resolution, where the premise of the resolution is to guarantee that access to city councilors during times of operation, postponing the resolution will just bring it back, and if it has the same exact premise, then it is still something that I don't believe should ever be put into effect, because I completely disagree with the premise that we should be allowed to do that. So I think that we should not be voting to postpone. I think we should be voting to scrap this resolution, and if we want to come back to the table with a proposal for an oversight process that is not invasive, then to the extent that this would be, and as members of the public have said that it would be, then I think that's a good thing. But based off of just the premise and the title of this resolution alone, I think we just have to, I agree with Councilor Bergman, we just need to end it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Councilor Grant, and then Councilor Shannon.
This resolution is broken. I also find this resolution to be very insincere.
Point of order.
Sorry, Councilor Grant. Yes, Councilor Shannon?
I believe that this is only about postponing, not the merits of the resolution.
Sure.
Well, that's one of the reasons.
Sorry, Councilor Grant, you just started your comments, and so I anticipate that you'll be keeping your comments here to the motion to postpone.
And I was.
I know you had just started there.
And
so,
I was.
Yeah, so please go ahead.
And I was.
Got it.
My feeling and my belief is completely related to why I would not support this motion. This was another unnecessary interruption that is a characterization of, how sometimes we're unfairly treated, these assumptions that are made that are not appropriate. Back to my comments, I agree with what my fellow councilors Broderick and Bergman said. I agree very strongly. And this is just not an appropriate resolution to move forward with, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Shannon?
Thank you, President Travers. I agree with Councilor Bergman that it is possible that during this period of postponement that we could come back and decide that this is not the resolution that we want to move forward with, that something else will come forward in the meantime, and I certainly am happy then to pull it or replace it with something better or something different. The issue remains. The issue needs to be addressed. And up until we had this resolution, nobody seemed to want to address that. And so I support postponement, and I would be happy to meet with the mayor as well as other supporters of the resolution who want to meet with the mayor and come to some resolution. I think that there are probably a number of different ways that we could reach resolution, which I am completely open to. But what's being called invaded privacy, it would be the goal during postponement to get the same rights that the mayor and her staff had. And if that can be done through other means, I'd be fine with that.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. I have Councilor Litwin. Are there any other councilors that wish to speak on the motion to postpone?
A point of information.
Yes, Councilor Grant.
So I had other comments about the resolution, if there's a vote to postpone that is successful, does that mean I can't make those comments?
The motion to postpone would, yes, dispose of the issue for tonight. It would be back on our agenda for the 24th, which would certainly present another opportunity for you to speak to it at that point in time. But once we take a vote on the motion to postpone, if it succeeds, then the item will be postponed until the 24th. If the motion fails, then we'd be back to the underlying motion, and you are next in queue, Councilor Grant. So I do have Councilor Litwin next in queue on the motion to postpone. Are there any other councilors that wish to speak on the postponement motion? All right, so I think we'll go to Councilor Litwin, and then Councilor Newbeezer, and then, well, we'll go from there. Councilor Litwin.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I support some of what Councilor Shannon said was what I was going to say. So I'm hopeful that in the next, by voting to postpone, which I do support, that the mayor would accept the invitation to have a meeting as soon as possible with us. I do want to note again, for the postponement's sake, that on 2/20, I spent an hour on the phone with the chief of staff and asked for that meeting. And we are 3 weeks now out. And so I just ask that we prioritize that meeting as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Councilor Newbeezer.
In trying to decide how to vote on this motion, whether to postpone or not, I'm trying to debate what action is actually going to bring us to a productive resolution. Do you vote no, kill this and have a serious conversation like adults on a legislative body together? Or do we...
I mean, implying that your colleagues are not adults, I think, goes a little beyond what's appropriate there, but you may continue.
Would never imply such a thing. Just want us to have serious conversations.
Okay.
Or do you vote to postpone so that we continue a conversation not started in a way that is conducive to productive outcomes, in my view? So thinking through this out loud for members of the public, because oftentimes they look at politicians arguing and rightfully get exhausted. If I went to work with a coworker and we were going to work on a project together, the first move would not be for me to write a proposal, go to a meeting with my boss, the public, and then debate the merits of the proposal in front of my boss if I'm supposed to be working on said proposal.
Point of order.
With my coworker.
Sorry, Councilor Newbeezer, there's a point of order here from Councilor Litwin.
I'm unclear how this relates to the discussion of postponement.
Okay, I'm going to allow Councilor Newbeezer to continue, but we'll ask, as I've mentioned, other councilors to please keep your comments germane to the motion to postpone.
Okay. I do think it relates because I'm trying to figure out how to be most collaborative in the situation, which will answer the question for my vote. Lord have mercy. Well, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Councilor Bergman, we've done one round here on the motion to postpone. If you could keep it very brief and germane to the postponement motion, please.
I will.
Point of order, Councilor Grant had her hand up for a second round, and that was ignored.
I think that was about the postponement. This is about the postponement. And I will be really short, just to say that one of the arguments in favor of postponement was that a request was made for a meeting on February 20th. This body met last on February 18th. We have not met since. It does not make sense to me to use that as a valid reason to support this resolution and the postponement of it in its how it's written. Thank you.
Point of personal privilege.
I don't think that you were in any way called out individually there, Councilor Litwin, so I'm not going
you.
to recognize that. Are there any other councilors that wish to speak on the motion to postpone? Councilor Grant?
It was said earlier, and I would definitely say again, with regards to the way that this resolution was brought about, where we keep throwing around the word collaboration, which right now I feel with the way the council's been operating doesn't really mean anything. And I don't think we should be entertaining any resolution that has not been fully presented to all of the council before being posted. We continue to see these things posted last minute. So I do not support a postponement because I do not support this moving forward at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I do not see any other councilors in the queue. Councilor Litwin?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that my request on 220 was to the mayor's administration. I welcome having further conversations with this body, but to clarify, it had nothing to do with the meeting schedule of this body. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're going to now go to a vote on the motion to postpone. On this issue, I will ask that the clerk. Well, no. Let's do hands here. All in favor of the motion to postpone made by Councilor Carpenter to March 24th, please raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. That motion carries 6-5. With Councilors Grant, Bergman, Broderick, Kane, and Newbeezer voting against, Councilors Travers, Shannon, McKnight, Carpenter, Barlow, and Litwin voting in favor. So that will be placed on the agenda for our meeting on March 24th. Thank you. The last item on our deliberative agenda was moved off of consent at the request of Councilor Grant. Item 6.5 here. Parking garage security contract extension through FY25 DPW Division of Parking and Traffic. Councilor Grant, did you have some questions off the top with respect to this particular issue, or would you like me to, I know we have Director Spencer here, provide Director Spencer the floor to be able to speak on this item, and it looks like we have Jackie Esperiti too as well. So, Councilor Grant, just wondering what your preference is in terms of who goes first here.
I can certainly explain why I wanted the item moved and what I would like Director Spencer to review.
Okay, I think that makes sense. So the floor is yours, Councilor Grant, and then we'll turn to representatives from DPW here.
Thank you. So in general, I've always believed that when we are looking at items that are related to community safety and spending money on community safety, that we should have it in the deliberative agenda so that the public knows exactly what we're investing in. So I do appreciate you being here tonight. To essentially, these parking garages have been a public concern for some time now and are very important to our downtown businesses and also to our visitors that come to our downtown. So I definitely will be supporting this item and supporting these funds to extend this contract. But if you could just kind of review the memo and then also the response around the question as to any continued involvement with the Sheriff's Department. And thank you very much.
Okay, and just Director Spencer, before you go, just Councilor Grant, because of your comments there, if you're open to it, I'd like to queue you up for a motion on this item. So you don't need to make it now, but I know there's some text here and just wanted to make sure you got it up there because I will be turning to you if that's appropriate. Director Spencer, thank you for being here.
Thank you, President Travers, and thank you, Councilor Grant, for the opportunity. I am joined by Division Director Jackie Esperti remotely. The memo in front of you seeks simply to extend an existing contract with a private vendor, Green Mountain Concert Services, to continue security services in the city's owned and managed garages, the downtown garage and the marketplace garage. There are budgeted funds for this in FY25. This is seeking really to extend the contract itself. We have had private security in the garages for at least a decade while I've been working for the city. This is a normal part of our operations. The times and the locations of where the security is shifts based on the needs of the day. And we have shifted a bit. It was previous last year where we had a number of break-ins in the downtown garage. The law enforcement, and actually thanks to the hotel partners, we were able to apprehend the individual who was causing that. Those issues have really decreased in downtown garage, and we've had more of a need to transfer resources up to marketplace. Let's see. We currently have 2 different shifts at marketplace, an overnight shift that is shared with the downtown garage, and a midday shift for Green Mountain Concert Services that starts at 3:30 and runs till the nighttime shift goes. We have supplemented those 2 Green Mountain shifts with 1 sheriff shift from the Chittenden County Sheriff's Office that goes from 11:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And Jackie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it for the most part. I think one of the questions was about adopting or changing what we've been doing, and the second Green Mountain concert shift, which was the 3:30 to 11:30 p.m. That's something that we added around Christmas time or the holidays, and that's just one of the ways that we've kind of changed some of the security over the last year or so.
And maybe if I may, just to finish off, the annual expense for security in the garage is, thanks to Jackie's effort, we looked in several past fiscal years, and it has ranged from a low of $105,000 up to around this last year, FY24, of around $250,000. So depending on how many shifts we order and how many hours we're trying to cover, and at which garages that rises and falls. We do have we have enough budgeted money for this extension in FY25. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Spencer. Councilor Grant, may I turn to you for a motion on this item, and then we can see if any other councilors have comments or questions?
Certainly, I move to authorize the Director of Public Works to execute an amendment to the FY24, FY25 contract with Green Mountain Concert Services for security services at the Marketplace Garage and Downtown Garage, extending the contract through September 30th of 2025 for up to an additional $115,000 in authorized expenditure for a total authorized contract value not to exceed $395,000, subject to review and approval by the City Attorney's Office and approval by the Chief Administrative Office for compliance with the city's procurement and expenditure policies.
Thank you, Councilor Grant, seconded by Councilor Bergman. Councilor Grant, did you wish for the floor back at all at this point?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other councilors with questions or comments on this item? Councilor Kane.
Thanks. I appreciate this being pulled off consent. So I understand we're not looking at the sheriff's contract right now, but can you tell me when does that end?
Jackie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so right now we don't have an end to the contract at all. It's just an open-ended contract as we need. Right now, we have 5 shifts open. They aren't being covered every day. There isn't a sheriff available every day, and that contract is based on their availability. For instance, when we first started speaking with them, they weren't able to send anyone because there was a push to write speeding tickets. So they weren't available for the garage. Recently, there was a sheriff that passed away, and so there was much more limited availability because this person was not working somewhere else. So it's based on the sheriff's availability. There is no end to the contract at this time.
Thank you. And then with the two different shifts, did I understand correctly, the overnight shift was a more recent addition?
The overnight, yeah, the overnight shift has been the long-term shift that has existed for a long time. It was the 3:30 to 11:30 p.m. afternoon, evening shift that was supplemented.
Thanks. And do you guys have a sense for which of those shifts sees higher levels of incidence?
Jackie, you want to answer that?
I would say they're probably fairly similar. The second shift, starting at 11 p.m., goes to both garages and circulates different areas that may not be as congested. The first shift, the 3:30 to 11:30, is strictly marketplace, and we ask them to stay in the tower. So that person is to walk up and down the tower and asking people to leave. So it's maybe a little bit more repetitive. We do get reports after every shift. I don't have the numbers on exact figures of folks that are asked to leave, but both shifts have a lot of them.
Citizen sent me some data from my records request today, and the overnight shift looks like it's very low levels of incidence. So just wanted to put that out there. Happy to follow up. And then in terms of like how we're measuring how effective these shifts are, is there a sense of levels of vandalism or incidents in general, or activity, or closures of parts of the facilities that has been measured and can be reviewed here?
Yes, we can certainly look at the data several different ways. I don't have it with me right now, and I'm happy to provide that to councilors. One is we have been unable to reopen the 2 out of the 3 stairwells in the marketplace garage because we've really struggled to be able to keep them clean and safe. So having one stairwell that we've been able to focus on with our staff and with security has been manageable. Overnight, a year ago at the downtown garage, I would say we really struggled with sometimes near nightly vandalism in that garage. We are fortunately in a much different situation nowadays, where I think, to your point, Councilor Kane, that we are not seeing the kind of repeated vandalism in the garages overnight that we had previously.
Thanks. And in the memo, there's a list of other efforts in addition to staffing these shifts, including aggressive graffiti control. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on the current standards relative to maybe how things, how that program stood maybe a year ago.
Sure. I'll start off, Jackie, and just say that one of the things I'm very proud about is that our garages, while old, I think are presenting very well these days. We have done a good job in quickly responding to graffiti, such that if there is graffiti, I want to know about it and it will get taken care of. And most days our garages do not have any graffiti, at least of substantial nature. That has been a major focus. Jackie's maintenance team is only 4 people, and we've had a vacancy until very recently. So it is a lot to maintain those structures. None of them are new, and they are high traffic. So thank you.
Thanks. And then just last question. I'm wondering when the security cameras were put in, and whether or not there's been consideration to utilizing that technology maybe to shift more towards like an incident response model rather than the staffing during fixed hours.
So the cameras are, we can monitor them in real time if we have someone working at that time. Overnight, we do not generally have staff to monitor the cameras at all. The cameras can be seen by the Burlington Police Department, and they have the ability to respond if they have staff to do so. But I would say most of the incidents, Jackie, are responded to by either security or our staff initiating, not from monitoring the cameras. Is that accurate?
That is true. We have recently, Lieutenant Henry from BPD has taken a bigger role in making sure that someone at dispatch is watching those cameras as often as possible. We spoke about this in the hotspot meetings that we have, and they're trying to do that a lot more. BPD has access to all of the cameras. They're the only ones who can go back and look at them. So they are watching them as well. And I know that they've been responding more often than previously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Is there, I'd like to go for a first round first, Councillor Grant, and then if there is no one, happy to turn back to you for last word before a vote. Is there any other councillor that wishes to get in on this item? Okay, so Councillor Grant, happy to give you the last word here, and then I think we'll go to a vote.
Thank you. So I always talk about data-driven, fact-based decisions, and I often look at incidents. In this case, I agree with what we are doing because of the past number of incidents and the need to keep control over the tower that we're able to keep open. As a lot of people know, I do go out at night, so I'm no matter which bar or restaurant I go to, I walk by Center Street, and I just walk by that whole area, and I'm always, there's a lot of people there, and if there wasn't a presence to keep things moving, we would be back at the number of incidents. I have there's no question in my mind about that. So I think it is important at this time to continue the staffing as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. So we will try to go to a vote now on this item. The motion is as made by Councillor Grant. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. So thank you very much, Chapin and Jackie, for being here this evening.
Thank you.
That concludes our deliberative agenda, which brings us to item 7, which is committee reports. Are there any councillors with committee reports? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that on the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee meeting on February 24th, we had a presentation on the Transportation Demand Management Action Plan, and I just wanted to call the public's attention to it because it's a pretty weighty plan. There's 75 pages there. We asked for some time to review it, and I'm sure all the TUC members are doing that. But we'll be voting on this at our next TUC meeting and then sending it on to the council. So I just wanted to flag that for anybody in the public who's interested. And our next meeting will be on March 25th.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. I'm going to go along the table here. Are there any other councillors that have a committee report? Councillor McKnight and then Councillor Shannon.
Yes, thank you. We have a Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee meeting coming up on Thursday. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong month here. It's the third Thursday in March, and now my computer froze, so I think it is on the 20th. Yes. No, sorry, the fourth Thursday. It's on the 27th. And we will be hearing an update from the Fletcher Free, from Mary Danko on their process, their capital campaign and the progress they're making there. And we will also hear an update from Director White on some changes and updates that are being made to some rules that govern the Parks Department. So come on down to 645 Pine Street at noon on the 27th if you want to hear about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McKnight. Councillor Shannon.
Thank you, President Travers. The Ordinance Committee has a meeting at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning in the Busher Conference Room, and we will be discussing the animal ordinance, the Performing Arts Center in the Enterprise Zone, and the incentives for reporting violations ordinance. It is my hope to get the animal ordinance and the Performing Arts Center back to the council by our meeting on the 24th. We're going to be, there's actually a draft of the incentives for reporting violations ordinance on our agenda. I'm not certain we're going to get to this tomorrow, and I'm not certain that we can return it by the 24th. But the city attorney's office did take the time to draft an ordinance, and so I encourage you to look at that, whether or not we're able to bring that forward. If not, that will carry into the next council. So that is my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Moving over here, are there any councilors with a committee report? Councilor Grant?
Thank you. The REIB committee will be meeting Tuesday, the 18th. I just want to mention to the community, we have a lot of the committees, and of course the city council has something called public forum, but we have added something called community forum, and it's meant to be a space for extended conversations from people in our community about particular issues that they want to talk about, that they don't really have a place to talk about, concerning issues around inclusivity and belonging. And our Public Safety Committee meeting will be Thursday, the 20th, and we do have a public forum there. I do allow members of the public certain leeway. And there's been a lot of feedback where people feel they don't always have a place to talk about what they are experiencing related to their feeling of being safe or not being safe. And we do invite members of the public who want to have space to talk about these things to be able to speak at the public forum, and we're pretty free with our time there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Are there any other councilors with a committee report? Okay. That takes us to the last item on our agenda, which is City Council President, Council updates. I just have a couple items that I would like to remark on. First of all, Mayor, you mentioned it earlier, but I don't think it should go without additional notice that on our consent agenda here this evening was an item approved by our Board of Finance tonight to create the new interim chief of police position, and I would just like to extend my gratitude to your efforts and the efforts of your office to secure Sean Burke to return to Burlington. I think that that's been pretty much universally applauded here, and I think at a time when our department is going to need a lot of leadership stability, I think that your office is due a great deal of credit for finding that great hire. And so we'd just like to acknowledge that the council has acted this evening to open that door for Sean Burke to walk through here on the 24th, and we're incredibly excited for him to join the city. I also would like to acknowledge, as you did, the success of the 3 bonds on the ballot, as well as the success of our school budget. But certainly the items that were put on the ballot by the city here, the 3 bond measures, I think a great deal of credit is owed to the city staff and to our unions who went to bat to ensure that these critical measures were passed. And so wanted to extend my gratitude to again, you, Mayor, and other city staff and unions who really put significant effort into ensuring that these vital bond measures passed. I also wanted to take the opportunity to express my gratitude and thanks to all the candidates who stepped up to run and serve this past town meeting day. Councilor Barlow and Councilor Grant, I'd like to congratulate you on your re-elections. And we'll look forward to voting. We'll look forward to welcoming some new members to the council after Councilor Shannon, your last meeting. There will be time to acknowledge that at March 24th, but the meeting after that, we'll be welcoming some new councilors to the table. Look, I think as is oftentimes the case in any election cycle, election cycles can be heated, but after the election, we all have work to do. And I think particularly with everything that is happening at the federal level right now, I acknowledge that we're all, as we sit as a new council here, going to have work to do to come together here and work together for the betterment of our city. And so I look forward to our recommitting ourselves to that work as we approach Organization Day. Those are my comments. Sorry? Oh, yes. So thank you, Councilor McKnight. We are a city of champions, it seems, this year. And I think there may be some resolutions forthcoming at our meeting on March 24th, but since our last meeting, the Burlington High School indoor track team, the Burlington High School Philosophy Club, and most recently, the Burlington High School boys basketball team had a great deal of success, including the basketball team winning the state championship here in Vermont. And so I think we'll have an opportunity to return to that, hopefully with some resolutions at our next meeting. But thank you, Councilor McKnight, for referencing that, and an early congratulations to those teams for their recent success. That is it for my updates. Seeing no other business before the council, I will adjourn our meeting at 8:51 p.m. and we'll look forward to seeing folks on the 24th. Thank you.